After you lay your quilt top, batting, and back, you need to find a way to keep all the layers from shifting. Tying or tacking the quilt every 4 to 5 inches is probably the easiest and quickest method to use. Often considered more utilitarian than decorative, tying is an alternative to machine quilting. You don't need many supplies, just a large-eyed needle, scissors, I like a needle threader to help, and also some sort of tie such as yarn, pearlized cotton, embroidery floss, ribbon, or anything else that you can get through the needle's eye. I also want to add that this is a great method to use when doing a group quilt, where some of the participants may not be as skilled as others. Almost everyone can tie a knot. Before I tie a quilt, I want to make sure that the layers stay put. I've used these safety pins to keep everything together. I've also made sure that I've added a little extra for the back and the batting, because during quilting sometimes things get sucked up, so I want to make sure that the top covers this. Later on I can cut the extra off when I'm done tying this quilt. I could mark this top to show where I'm going to place the ties, but I think I can just eyeball this and it'll save me a step. I've decided to use this contrasting thread, mainly so you can see a little bit better, but also because it might add another design element to this top. Now if you decide that you don't want the ties to show, you can use matching thread to the background. To thread my needle, I like to use this sturdy needle threader. So I take my needle and I take the loop of this and place it through the eye. This is much thicker than the loop of a normal needle threader. You would probably tear it apart if you were to try it with yarn. So I take my yarn, I place it inside that loop. Let's see if it's going to go. And after my yarn is in that loop, I take my needle, pull it over the top of the yarn, then pull the yarn out of the needle threader, and here I have my threaded needle. Now, when I tie a quilt, I'm just going to use a single strand thread and I don't have to knot it. That's the one good thing about tying a quilt. There's no knots in your thread just when you go to finish the tie. Before you go to make your knot, you might want to make sure that you have something down to protect your tabletop. This is an old table, so I really don't need my cutting mat, but I'm putting it here just to remind you that you might end up sticking through to whatever surface you're on. So you want to try that. So I am going to say one thing about these needles. I've used a big eye here to sort of demonstrate that needle threader. Good thing about using a big eye is it's easier to thread. The bad thing about using a big eye is it's harder to pull through the background. So I'm going to switch up needles here. I've got one that has a thinner eye and it's a little bit easier to get through. But I am going to say when you're using yarn and a thicker needle, it's tough going through all the layers of the fabric. So I've decided my tie is going to go about right here. I'm going to go down through all the layers of the fabric and take a little bite like that. Pull my thread through. I'm going to leave a tie extra, and some people like to tie at this point, but I like to put a second stitch in there just to make sure it stays put. So I'm going to come right next to that first tie and put another little bite in my fabric and pull it through like so. I'm going to clip that. I have these two strands that I tie a knot one, and then I tie a second knot, just one thread over the other. Now let's see, I was going this way, let's do that. And when I'm finished, if I want to leave long ties, I can, but you can see the other ones that I've done. I've clipped that off. Let's see, let's make it about that thick. I'll turn this crazy quilt over so you can see what the stitch looks like on the back. If you don't want the stitch to show, then the backing fabric should match your thread. A printed fabric will also help to hide your stitches better than a solid colored fabric. I hope this helps you when tying your quilt. For more information on quilts, please visit us at learnhowtoquilt.com.